Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, I am glad you guys are here. Today, I wanted to take a little time and have a short chat about what I kind of look at as the Demko effect and how it has kind of worked its way into my collection and why it, from a large full size knife, is kind of my go to and something that I I just really enjoy collecting his designs. And when I say his designs, I speak that loosely. So starting out was not my first Demko effect knife, but the Cold Steel 4 Max is kind of like the pinnacle of an overbuilt, hardworking knife with a proprietary lock that is allegedly the strongest in the game and has tests to back that up to a lot of extents. Um, it is a very heavy version of a backlock that adds another stop area, which we won't go into all the mechanics. But if you can see that stop pin down there. So not only is it locking down, when that blade comes up, this bar doesn't just lock behind the tang, it actually locks into the tang. So it gives it superior lockup. And you guys can do some Google on the fail tests of the Demko TriAd Lock, which the Cold Steel 4 Max, which is a huge knife that I carry sometimes in my pack, but not one that I carry in my pocket, shares the same locking mechanism as in my Cold Steel 8010. This knife is more of an EDC knife, but it's still on the bigger side. I love this knife, guys. It was my first real carry because I got the 80 or the 4 Max long after I had the Cold Steel 8010. I want to say the 8010 was my first Demko inspired lock. I added a Pops clip off of Etsy, a deep carry clip, which allows you to carry it deeper, but it is a little bit more noticeable in the palm. But this knife is in S35VN G10, and it uses that same TriAd lock. I don't know if you can see that little bar right there, that little 90-degree turn. So not only is it locking behind the blade like a traditional back lock, it is locking into this right here. I don't know if you guys can see that if I'm too far away to be picking it up. But it's basically locking right behind there. And when that falls down, it locks right into that gap. So what it's basically doing is giving you what some of the analysts that know a lot more than me say this is the strongest lockup that you can get. I don't know if that's true. I haven't tested it, but there's a lot of information out there. And really, the 8010 to me is just the carryable version, scaled down version of the Cold Steel 4 Max. So my first Demko lock that I kind of became enthralled with because the action on this is great. I became enthralled with it because it took me quite a while to learn that I could not leave my finger right here and push it. I had to put my finger up kind of where this fake hole is where you'd put a stop pin through just so the tang would hit my finger. But you can thumb flick this knife, drop shut, middle finger flick this knife, and it's still a big enough knife to cut through all kinds of firewood, to baton through, to make a fire, to work out in a campsite, to go on a hike, or to EDC. This is the Demko, really it's a cold steel, but I refer to it as the Demko 8010. Fantastic knife. And again, shares the same lock, the TriAd lock, as the 4 Max. But then we have my favorite cold steel Demko lock, which a lot of people hate. This is a very polarizing knife, guys. I can remember Lefty's early review on it where he just hated it, and all of his points, as much as I disagreed with them, were valid, because if you're not experienced with this knife and you've not fidgeted with this knife before and you don't know where the pressure points are, like I just did it right there, intentionally locking it up, you can make it a very unique and not very functional knife. But this utilizes what's called the scorpion lock. I haven't played with this knife like I used to, but I still, like riding a bike, remember how easy it is to, with one hand, deploy it. Whoops, as I fail it. Deploy it. I can't really middle finger flick it, but I can thumb flick it. And then what you have going on here is something totally different, where you've got this bar that's under tension here. And this bar's under tension in a big way. So I would guess that's probably about 2 pounds of pressure. And what you'll notice is you've got this cutout in the blade here, back in the tang. And what happens is this scorpion lock, which has got a lock bar in it, is putting pressure and then coming to rest right there. So it's putting pressure on the deployment all the way out. So what I think a lot of people do is when they're trying to deploy the knife, they've got too much pressure on that lock bar, which is working against the knife trying to go out. So what I'm real careful about doing, and I've got an MX Gear, I think, deep carry clip here, is when I get my fingers locked into it, I don't even touch that scorpion lock. I keep that totally open, and then the blade is allowed to move under its momentum, and it opens very well. Now, it's not as smooth as a TriAd lock, but I think this lockup is next level, because what you have is when it comes around, you've got a stop pin that catches it internally there. And then you've got this big stop pin on this scorpion lock that's under a great deal of pressure, locks in. And once that's locked in and you go to grip it, your hand is putting more pressure on the scorpion lock and it's not going anywhere, guys. And then you want to close it, you just give it a little flick, it's closed. You get your hand right, you can really fidget with this knife, and it's so unique in what actuates it that I just find it to be one of my favorite Demko designs, and that's the Cold Steel 8015. Also an S35VN G10. Matter of fact, this is probably going to be upgraded very soon when I reach out to Marty and order some original goat titanium scales for this. But that brings me to where Demko is in my budget now, and where I have formed what I would consider an unhealthy affinity for this design. Luckily, at Blade Show and in Nashville, I've never gotten their early bird, and there have not been any 20s or 20Ss or you know, what I would consider an American made Demko. These are all 80 20.5s. And what I have here is kind of a collection that is over time. So what we've got is we've got one of the original AUS 10s, which I have put an edge on, which, see if I can find some paper, has held an edge very well, very slicey. I don't know if mine just happens to have a good heat treat or if I haven't used it hard enough, even though I've used the shit out of these knives, because they're beaters to me. Beaters in a good way, meaning they're getting used and carried quite a bit. But all of the Demkos have 17-degree edges put on them by me. And I've got the original AUS 10A. I've got an AUS 10A sheep's foot, which I probably should have saved some of that paper and cut it, because this is the other AUS 10. This is thicker stock, but it's very slicey too. So I've got the shark's foot with carbonized carbon fiber scales. I've got the AUS 10 original version with some Sharp by Design boa micarta or python micarta scales. And then I've got the D2 version for Knife Center, K112 D2, with some original goat titanium scales that I picked up from Marty at Blade Show. And then I've got probably the one that means the most to me, which is one that I got on a raffle part of the Jason Brown raffle. It had an AUS 10A blade, but at the time they just released the 3V. So, and they've released other blade steels now. These all have the this more simple pivot that doesn't have the, you know, the what I consider the true Demko USA pivot, even though these knives that have it are made in Taiwan too. But this 3V blade, I reached out to our buddy, trying to find some paper, guys, Brian, who makes blades, who is a blade master, and he does a lot of mods on 80-20.5s where he'll take somebody's knife in, he'll put an amazingly well heat treated, unique, one of a kind, awesome blade in Magna Cut or whatever steel the customer wants. He does reblades. And so I thought he might have some 3V sitting around his shop. So I reached out to him. He was real quick. He was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I've got 3 blades. The edges aren't good on them, but I'll make you a really good deal on one. I was like, Brian, that's perfect. I've got a TS Prof. I can put the edge on it. We can go from there. If, you know, he gave me a price, I felt like it was really fair. So I did a blade swap on this one, which was my Jason Brown raffle knife, which has original goat aluminum scales that are Cerakoted. The reason I say that is the Demko 80-20.5 gets a lot of love, but it also gets a lot of hate. And I'm one of the first ones that think in the Gryvery, it is not a very pleasant knife. And I think everybody can agree that we're paying for this lock, the Shark Lock, which is the iteration of Demko's evolution into lock, what I think is mastery. Because I think he's hit a home run here. So the Shark Lock comes right around, engages, falls into that blade, giving you maybe not the same strength as a TriAd Lock. But again, you've got your pressure pushing down on the lock. The lock is locked in, super strong. And then with a spring and just a flick, it is so easy to bring home. So the first Demko 20.5 that I had in my collection was this one here. It had Gryvery scales on it for the longest time. Scales finally started coming out because I bought this knife not at Blade Show 2021, but I bought it when they first hit the stores, like in the first or second drop of them. So I kept it with Gryvery for a while, carried it, loved it. Found these scales, which now they make much better scales, but these are special to me because they're part of the original me kind of falling in love with this particular knife, the 20.5. And from that, I knew that I wanted a shark's foot too, because I'm a sheep's foot kind of guy. I actually like the shark's foot better, but to me, like everybody else, the blade to handle ratio just looked a little funky based on what's exposed on top of the knife, right? But I picked this one up knowing that I was going to be working over at Carbonize, and I let him do maker's choice. I said, you do not have to do Toxic Storm. You don't have to do 80s. You do whatever you think would be cool. And he said he'd been working with this gold carbon fiber. Bring it on. Thank you. Paid for them. They came in, and they are absolutely wonderful. They make this knife feel 100% different than this one and 100% different than the original. And the original had raw pineapple, which is this pattern, original goat scales, before it had these. I gifted those scales to Tim Bama Ninja, my brother from another mother. He'd gotten a new 80-20.5 from our mutual buddy, A to Z EDC. And I thought, since I was going to put these micarta scales back on the 20.5, that Timmy would really, or Bama Ninja would really like the titanium scales, because this takes the knife to a totally different level. Because now you've got an aluminum, and I said titanium, but you've got an aluminum scale that gives it that really good texture, gives it strength, takes away any flex that you might have, utilizes the same liners. And then from there, at Blade Show 2022, I ran into Marty over at the original Goat booth, and I'd learned about some of the upgrades that they'd made going from the aluminum to the titanium. He had this stock, this set, which would not have been my original color choice, but I love it. Kind of this light stonewash blue and stock at Blade Show. They were the last titanium set that were there. So I immediately snagged them, and I'm glad I did. And guys, a lot of people think that, and a lot of my friends, A to Z EDC has cleared out his Demko 20.5s. Leave in the comments what you guys, and I don't ever ask that, but I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on the 80 20.5? I will agree it is overpriced. When I got mine, I think it was 150, but I knew I was paying for the research development and this lock. This lock is to me a $150 lock. Should be rewarded in its innovation. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think about the 80-20.5 or the 80-10 with the TriAd Lock or the Scorpion Lock, which you prefer. But most importantly, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for coming by the channel. Thank you. Thank you to all my channel members. Thank you for all of you that take the time to subscribe. And any of those of you that come by and take the time to even watch 5 seconds of my video, thank you. I do invite you to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. I totally get it if you don't want to. All it does is it lets YouTube know that you're interested in the type of content that I'm putting out, which is EDC content, and it'll make you aware when I release new videos, when I go live. And what it does to the channel is it helps by showing that the people that are watching the videos are wanting to see more of them. So it's this kind of a selfish ask for you to subscribe, but at the same time, if you like what you see, it's actually a good thing for everybody because, again, you can always either mute me or unsubscribe. Hopefully, I don't do anything that makes you unsubscribe. I'd love to have you join me on this little EDC knife rabbit hole thing that I fell into about 3 years ago when COVID first started, or fell back into, I guess I should more accurately say. But guys, please look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please look out for one another. Go forward with love in your heart. And like always, guys, always, always, before you scream, before you get angry, choose debate, not hate. I love you all. Peace.